Hey everybody. For yesterday, today, and also Friday of next week, we've been talking and going to be talking about how porn has affected our lives. We went into yesterday specifically how we were introduced to porn, but today we're going to be talking about how it impacted us and the process we went through that before we came to where we're currently at now. So I want to really jump into that. You're going to want to be there for it, so let's go. Oh. Well, hello there, and welcome to thoughtraid, a show where we take on thoughts and find better ways of thinking about them. I'm Brandon, this is Tim, and today we're going to be continuing our series. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this all together.
Are you nervous, Brandon?
Maybe slightly, yeah. I feel like I always have some degree of nerves whenever we go live because, I don't know, there's just the adrenaline of going live in general. But anyways, we are going to be talking about today how porn has affected our lives, that you can see what it's done for us, so that way you can kind of think about it for your own selves, I guess. I don't know how to word this. It's just coming out weirdly.
Well, for me, porn has done great things.
Wow!
If you want to join my OnlyFans, onlyfans.com/...
No.
I've always thought, like, maybe I could just sell feet pics.
Ew. I mean, that's... what?
It's just weird how things like that become such a focal point and a thing for certain people.
Well, if the most interesting part is how sexuality has become people's whole identity. Like, people legitimately seem to build an identity around porn. Or not porn specifically, but I was going to say their sexuality. I don't know why I said porn. Sexuality. Like, that they are their sexuality. They have no other defining characteristics. They're not, a baker or a... child of God or a American or whatever. They are trans, they are homosexual, they are heterosexual, they're whatever. It's like, I don't know, I guess it's simply because sexuality itself is so tightly entwined with us in our identity. I guess a lot of people more identify with it. There's more emotions attached to it, there's more fears attached to it sometimes, or angers, or whatever. How people view themselves, the quality of who they are, seems to be tied up in that. I guess that's what I see. But that's not necessarily the focus of what we're going to be talking about today. That's what we're going to be talking about today is specifically how it has affected our lives. And I wanted to go into that.
Wait a second, this isn't porn.
That's correct.
It's not yet.
You've been... Wait, no, it's not going to turn into that.
Once again, onlyfans.com/Tim and Brandon.
/thoughtraid, no. No.
Options shared in
you won't find it there. But, no, I wanted to talk about that specifically because, again, yesterday we talked about how we were introduced to it. And the reason why I wanted to kind of go into how we got into it and how it's affected our lives is because, I want people to know you're not alone. In whatever you're going through, it's not something that you're an island to yourself and no one else deals with this. Very early on when I was going through coming out of addiction to porn, I learned that we're not, like a lot of people deal with porn, women and men alike, all over the place deal with porn. And I think a lot of times, especially depending on the type of porn, you can feel isolated. And I just don't want people to feel isolated in that. Like, I feel like that feeling of being isolated, that no one goes through what I go through, makes it all that much harder to deal with the addiction in the first place if you are addicted to porn. So that was like one of the first things I wanted to just kind of address by, here's how I got into it. So if you haven't seen it, we have that up there on YouTube in the list of videos, the most recent one that we did. But with that said, how it affected our lives. Do you want to go first or shall I?
Well, I think it's going to be different for the two of us. And
yeah.
I think identifying that starting point would kind of be good because yesterday we talked about our backgrounds. Yeah. How you were raised in a Christian household and I was raised in a not Christian household. Well, my mom identified as a Christian. You know,
she identified as Baptist.
Yeah. She had a Bible on the coffee table, and she'd read it every now and then. But it was never the incorporation of Jesus in life wasn't really present. It was more like a status, like, okay, you're supposed to believe in a agnostic figure. I guess that's the right way to put it. And it's called God, and Jesus is part of this, but I don't really know much about him. That whole concept. But yeah, like that all started for me when I was about, gosh, I don't know, first grade, second grade, something like that. And I engaged pornography up until the age of like 29, 30. So that's, man, that is a long time. It's like 20 something years of porn, just like boobs and butts and penises. And, you know, it's just one of those things where it's like you go in the locker room in middle school, for instance, and the idea of taking showers in front of people, it's like, oh no, you can't do that. You know, this is awkward. And yet you go home, type on the computer, whatever thing you're looking for, and then, oh, this is really exciting. I like looking at this. You know, and yet the other aspects of it, like, I don't know, taking your shirt off in public. You know, I was squeamish about that. So I don't know, like the differences in what I did in private and what I did in public were kind of interesting. And the things I would allow and wouldn't allow. Like, I wasn't even a Christian in my early 20s, and I didn't really have those values, so to speak, I guess. But there were certain boundaries I wouldn't cross in my public life in front of people because I wanted to be perceived a certain way, I guess. But, you know, when I got home, man, everything came off. Literally. You know? But the thing is, like, it's almost like I was living a dual life, you know?
Yeah.
And in part, I didn't, in my early 20s anyways, I was like, well, this is just a thing. I'm relieving issues that I have because I'm choosing not to have sex until I'm married. And that was just a personal conviction for whatever reason. And so in my mind, I rationalized, okay, well, this is helping me. This is a good thing. Right? Did you ever view using pornography that way?
I don't think I actually ever viewed it like that until I got older and started to deal with it again last year, and slightly before that point, because I didn't have any mental space for it. I was just so upset with myself that I was more focused on I need to stop, but I can't stop kind of thing, you know. And it was I never stopped to think, oh, this is going to help me feel better. I just did, and I didn't put words to it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
Move this over just a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotta be more centerized.
OCD, man. But I guess, like, what you're talking about, you were running from it from the perspective of, I just can't quit, this is bad. And I just engage in it because I didn't have a reason to quit.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of people that I know that will see this video and they're like, well, you know, pornography is not bad. In fact, it's a valid industry if done in the right way. And they'll acknowledge that human trafficking and exploitation of underage people, not just women, but underage people, mostly women, but guys as well, you know, that's bad. And some of the motives in the porn industry are bad. But there are people that will say, well, it's a valid industry. You know, as long as it doesn't really hurt anybody, it's the person's choice with what to do with their body. It actually doesn't damage them. But you know, I'm married now, and I engage in things that married people engage in, you know, and I do have the history of watching porn for 20 years in the back of my mind. As much as I want it to go away, and like these invasive thoughts and images and things, as much as I want it to go away, they come back from time to time. And it's just one of those things where, once again, somebody could argue, well, you know, it's not that big of a deal, you know, just... You know, those thoughts are normal. Well, you know, just thinking of other people when I should be thinking of one person to respect and honor them, it's tough, you know. And I really wish that wasn't the case because it just feels like it almost feels like cheating, even though it's in the past.
I would say, in a way, pornography is responsible for my struggles with homosexuality or temptations in that direction. And especially also the low, what's the word I'm looking for? Low standards of which, like, different companies set for themselves and what they should or should not hold themselves to when it comes to advertising their product and then putting that out there. Like, I understand that, those things, I should be able to and do, resist what they're showing me and not allow it to affect me because I should be the one who's control of my eyes. But at the same time, society has not made it easy, honestly, with over-sexualizing everything. In fact, I think, especially when I was going through high school and middle school, I feel like America was a lot more sexualized in commerce than it is presently. Because I remember distinctly between, like, my high school years and the first bit that I was working in Brookstone and stuff, so that was, like, all the way up to, like, 2013, 14, 15, places like Hollister and Abercrombie would have virtually naked men on their bags.
And women.
I never saw the women on their bags. I always saw the men for some reason. But they weren't advertising clothing at all. It was the body that they were advertising.
Oh yeah, Abercrombie and Fitch sold sex. They didn't sell their clothes.
Exactly. It was just straight porn on the bag. And like for whatever deal I struggled with it in general, like that definitely made life harder. That didn't have to be. They didn't have to do that. I know that sex sells, but it doesn't mean like it's morally right to make it sell.
Well, it's just like here in Haines Mall, there's a Victoria's Secret place, right? And every time I walk past it, there's like in one of the windows, there's this picture of this woman laid back, and she's in lingerie, and it's this huge, like 40-foot, I'm guessing, ad. And if I walk past it by myself, it's like I acknowledge it, and it's like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, attractive woman, she's wearing lingerie, and there's a level of numbness because we've been so immersed in it.
Right.
And plus, I have a history of seeing more.
Yeah.
And plus, I have a wife now. It's like that stuff's not news to me.
Yeah.
But whenever I walk past it, and well, in that situation, it's easy for me to just like, whatever. But when I walk past it and my wife is with me, just the fact that that's something that marketing is using to catch my attention, and it catches my attention because, I mean, obviously I'm a man, right? Now I'm saying obviously some of you are homosexual, some of you whatever. Like, yeah, I get that too. But it's geared towards that, right? Towards people who find that attractive, to grab attention. And it weirds me out, man, because it's like I really want my wife to feel respected. I really want her to feel like my eyes are for her. And that's not just a Christian thing. I mean, a lot of Christian culture out there is like, your eyes are for your mate only. Well, yeah, but in application, it's like the idea of emotional cheating, for instance. It's very similar. It's like, we were just having a conversation. Well, your emotions are for me too at that level of intimacy, right? If you guys haven't already, go to YouTube, search Break the Meta, and watch the video, The Relationship Between Intimacy and Commitment, that I did with Chelsea Cordell. And it talks about how when you're in different relationships, everything from like acquaintances, work relationships, family, friends, inner circle, wife, whatever, your level of intimacy has to change. And I think one of the ways, we were talking before about naming the stream, ways that porn has damaged us. And I was like, well, I don't really feel like I've been damaged. But at the same time, it's like just thinking about the levels of intimacy that I think are appropriate for different relationships. Just the fact that I'm able to look at a woman in lingerie in public doing a pose like this and be somewhat numb to it, that just shows that my relationship with certain things and the level of intimacy granted to it is kind of out of tune.
Right. Exactly. And like I said, and I really want to emphasize this, like I really do think that the porn industry is responsible to a degree with the struggles that I've had with homosexuality, and maybe also for other men as well. I don't know to what degree, because it's not like I've surveyed multiple men who struggle with homosexuality, but like the reason why as I've gotten older, that I realized I struggled with same-sex attraction is because I grew up with a very strong mother and a respect for women. Like, I never it took me a long time to realize that women have sexual desires, that are there, and they're very strong and prevalent. I wouldn't begin to allow to see that because of just how how it was living with a very strong mother, and not wanting, and also living in a culture, because it was over sexualized, where a lot of men my age would catcall women, would treat women disrespectfully, openly and blatantly. And you would see that in high school, and you would see that in middle school when you make sexualized jokes and stuff of that nature. And I would see that everywhere, and I associated that with just, you're a pig. You have no control over yourself whatsoever. But the reality is I pushed that away. There was nothing, like, when you push the opposite sex away, in the sense of, like, I don't want to treat them like other men has treated them, and not even think of them in a sexual manner whatsoever. What is their other options? There's men. And that wouldn't even really be on my radar, except that porn is so easily accessible. And so where did all of my sexual drive go? If it couldn't go into women, it went into men. And I held it back. And I never went into a homosexual relationship, by the grace of God. But didn't prevent me from looking for porn. And porn provided that sexual release for me every day. And if I tried to stay away from it at home, I would run into it at the mall. Or I run into it in a conversation with someone at school or somewhere. And it just haunted me everywhere I went. And again, it is my job to control where my eyes go. But at the same time, society didn't have to make it so hard.
That's what she said. I'm sorry, guys. This was the perfect opportunity.
Of all times, you had to make that joke. Of all time.
Well, just thinking about this, just thinking about how intimacy has been skewed. The title of today's stream is How Porn Damaged Our Lives. And I think you're talking about the joking stuff, like that's what she said, and all the that type of raunchy, that's the word I'm looking for, raunchy humor and stuff. I remember watching shows like Beavis and Butthead and going to school just talking about sex. Like, I learned about sex on the bus in middle school. I mean, that's where we talked about it, because everybody's trying to explore it. Everybody's got theories. Some of the kids in middle school were doing it. They were doing oral sex on the bus. I mean, it was just...
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where kids left to their own devices, they're going to figure stuff out. Or try to, right? And they're going to act on impulse. Especially when the expectation that society has is, this is, talking about porn, modeling sexuality as, it's okay to do this. This is normal. And if you watched our stream from yesterday, what was conveyed to me was, porn is bad unless you're of age, right? And so for me, it was, porn's not bad. It was just bad of me to engage in it because I was underage, right? And for you, it was different because there were different codes of morality and ethics in the Christian household. But then, if you think about that, porn being viewing sexual acts which are extremely intimate. So if you look at like the relationship pyramid, it's very high as far as like the cost of admission, where you have to pay commitment to get intimacy in exchange, right? So intimacy of sex should be pretty high, right? Otherwise, you have things like babies and STDs and all emotional attachment. There's all this stuff that can happen where it's like, you got to make sure that the person that with whom you're engaging is ready to make that same commitment to you, just in case some of this stuff does happen, right? But looking at that pyramid, since it was modeled for us, especially with porn being so readily available and talked about, and even in the church, just demonized and protected instead of the conversation being open and free about it, like actively engaging, just like, oh no, porn, let's protect our kids until they're 50. Yeah,
they're 50.
It's like, okay, well, sex should be up here, but because we're not actively talking about it, and because we're just allowing society to say it's okay to just include everybody in this intimacy. It's way down here, and it's really confusing because then in other areas of life where there should be a high cost of admission for levels of intimacy, and what I'm talking about is emotional intimacy, vocational intimacy, just all these different things where your expectations of somebody should be high enough for them to have to pay a cost of entry. It's like that messes everything else up too.
Well, a problem that existed also in the early 2000s was that there wasn't enough talk in the church about sexual stuff. So another problem that I had was that I knew that porn was wrong, didn't know how to stop. It was also, homosexual porn was my outlet for my own general sexual desires, but no one in the church was willing to talk about it because reasons. I don't know all the entire reasons. There was stupid books written during that time, like I Kissed Dating Goodbye, that just damaged the church, damaged a lot of Christians that were trying to live their best life, but instead were put into weird shackles about things. There was a lot of, at least in my circles, there was a lot of this push to be out of this world. But the Bible says we're in this world, just not of this world, which means that we still exist with people that don't know anything about God and want nothing to do with him, and in a society that's all sorts of things. And for too long, the church tried to stay out of the world and exist somewhere else in space, waiting for the Lord's return in a ever so crumbling society that is just terrible, whatever. And that was just not effective. And so a lot of people who could have had good conversations about sexuality didn't have it, felt that it was the wrong thing to do. And that probably was born under the shame, just now as I've been doing studies about history, maybe that was born out of the shame of just the sexual revolution of the 60s. They went way far to the other side during that time, and they felt shame about that. So by the time we came around, they were too hush-hush about it, as if it never happened. But it did. And it affected this generation of this weird combination of I can't talk about it, but yet my parents were way so loose about it at the same time. Like, what do you do about it? So the Christians, so me in my situation, there just wasn't enough talk about it. I was dealing with it. I could go to counseling about it, but where was the pastor talking about the morality of these things on a service of masturbation, of pornography, of homosexuality? A lot of them just try to stay away from the topic entirely.
I think one of the keys there, being in Christian culture now, is that, and hear me out before you make a snap judgment for what I'm about to say.
Banned.
Yeah. But Christianity has a knack for making something that's not truly a groundbreaking essential into an essential. And what I mean by that is, and the LGBT community acknowledges this too. How can you call out homosexuality but allow anger? How can you call out transgenderism but allow deceit? How can you call out being non-binary or whatever and allow fraud or white lies or anger, right?
Right, you can't.
But the thing is, it's like with sexuality, I'm really grateful, and maybe it would have been different, I don't know. I'm really grateful that I was brought up the way that I was, even though a lot of mistakes were made. And as odd as it sounds, I am grateful that I struggled with pornography, right? Because since I wasn't protected from it, I made mistakes, but I was given the freedom to make my own decision about it if I wanted to. But I think that's the thing. It's like some people are never going to want to challenge that. Some people are going to want to just engage in it just because it feels good. But that's the same with so many other things. That's the same with food. People engage in unhealthy eating habits, even though it's killing their body, drinking soda after soda after soda after burger, saturated fat, all this bad stuff, and not exercising, and that's not called out. And it's like, well, you can make that decision on your own. You're going to reap the benefits of it.
Yeah, the reality is, I think the church ended up treating sex in general as a bad thing almost, rather than because the reality is it's not bad. It's a good thing. God gave it to us. He gave us the ability to reproduce. He called it good. But there's a right place for it, and there's a wrong place for it. And since I feel like a lot of the church was afraid to navigate that because maybe they themselves were dealing with, like, there's a lot of pastors that struggled with extramarital affairs, pornography, stuff of that nature. And so they didn't, because they were dealing with it and unwilling to be open and honest about what they were dealing with, and then didn't address it at all. All the other people who were being honest about their struggles and going through things didn't have that basis of what to talk about in their own local churches and stuff. And so instead of how do you navigate sexuality, instead it was all bad. Because the reality is, and we're slowly figuring this out, and there's a lot of backlash about it, but there is a safe and good place for sex, and all other forms outside of it can be very damaging, psychologically, physically, financially, with OnlyFans and people paying into that, not good for the wallet. Because you're putting in money for a fake relationship.
Somebody made a joke the other day. He was asking out this girl, and she was like, "Yeah, why don't you pick me up? Let's go out to dinner, buy me a steak and stuff." And he was like, "No," and he's like, "Why would I pay $100 to take you out when I can just pay $4.99 and see you on OnlyFans?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's unfortunately that's the world we live in, where intimacy is scary because it takes effort. Like nobody wants. It's so easy to get wrapped up into it because you can just log on to whatever and pay a very low cost of entry to have the intimacy of a relationship with somebody, and you don't have to deal with any of the emotions. You don't have to deal with any of the whatever. Like there's no qualification process.
I want to qualify something here of my reaction. I reacted the way I did with was not because of the person, but just because of the unhealthiness of that viewpoint. And it came from a place of sorrow for a person who was going through that, of recognizing that they would more rather have fake intimacy with a person without risking the reality of who they are than they would to go and have this lunch. Not to say even that is even what the option was. Is it better? I mean, I'm not saying that's better, but I'm just saying that just how far we've come to this place. It'll get you. Porn will get you one way or another. It will warp how you view yourself, other people, and sex in general. It did me. Like there was just. It prevented me from figuring out what healthy sexuality looked like, because I was so afraid. I didn't even explore my heterosexuality that was there, and I knew, and because I was like, there was just no option of it in my head, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't have the time necessarily to go into how all it affected me, but it did. It didn't help.
Well, the convenience of it was really confusing for me, because on one hand, I just acknowledged I didn't want to have sex till I'm married, right? And that wasn't a Christian point of view. That was me just not wanting to enter all of that and taint it. It's kind of like when you buy groceries, and there's always that temptation, if you're super hungry, to eat them on the way home. And then when you get home and you're ready to make dinner and go through that process and sit down and have a nice meal, it's like, well, I'm not hungry anymore because I had a fraction of how satisfying it would have been to sit there and have the meal. So there was that, me like waiting, which was hard enough because I was a male in my 20s. I had a cool car, I worked out. I felt like I was attractive back then, and I didn't really have any crazy things going on. I could have dated and had sex and done all that stuff if I wanted, but it was like just one of those things for me where I didn't want to. And yet, because of that, I just deceived myself, and it was super convenient. Well, I'm horny. I don't want to get into a relationship. This needs to be resolved somehow. Let me just turn on the computer, look at some stuff, masturbate, and take care of it. And in my mind, it made sense. It's like, okay, well, this is a good thing. And moving on toward, through my 20s, I really didn't see a problem with it. And it wasn't until I started dating and thinking about actual marriage, and actually, because back then marriage just seemed like this thing that was far off. Like it was never going to happen. If it happened, and if it was going to happen, it was tomorrow. It was not today. It was not right now. It was always tomorrow. And when it got to tomorrow, it was the next day. And so my radar didn't really acknowledge, okay, well, marriage is going to happen. Like I don't, kind of like you don't, American society is really bad at preparation. We're really bad at preparing for things. We're really good at the scramble afterwards when crap has hit the fan.
Yeah.
But when I started dating who is now my wife, that became a lot more real to me, because I started thinking to myself, okay, well, how would this make her feel? How do I feel about myself knowing that I'm selling out to this in the short term instead of focusing on the long term? If really my eyes are on the health of our marriage and me taking care of my marriage and me sewing into my marriage and me doing my part, why have I let this go so wrong for so long? And that, once again, it permeated every aspect of my life. My finances were the same way, because I thought, okay, well, tomorrow's never going to come. Right now, I just want what's going to get me by because there's so much stress in my life for whatever reason. Let me just placate myself and let me have the intimacy without paying the commitment. And really, I don't know if pornography was the cause of that, but I know it was a very heavily contributing factor.
Yeah. And it's just interesting to look back and just see the different areas where it affected me. Now that I'm older, I do recognize that it's a comfort thing. Mm-hmm. I can see that now, and it may also be like a comparison thing too, slightly. I don't know to what degree it's a comparison thing. I just know that, like sometimes I wish I had the body of the man that I'm seeing. Mm-hmm.
Dude, same. I mean, watching that stuff, it's like it's Hollywoodized, it's cinematized, and it's like your expectations are already really stupid. Like you can have, even in just dating culture, like within our group and groups that I've seen, it's like everybody wants a 10, but in actuality, most everybody's a 6. And it's everybody wants greater than what they have. They want to be greater than they are, and they're never satisfied with what they have and who they are, and that in turn makes them unsatisfied with what they receive from other people because it's not what they expect. And in porn, it's, dude, I mean, everybody knows porn is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And even though we acknowledge that, subconsciously we want that.
Yeah, we want perfection. We want someone who would do everything exactly the way we want them to do it, even though that's not realistic.
Yeah.
And that's something I don't fully quite understand yet, not being in a marriage, but, I feel like one day I'll be able to expound on that with greater understanding. Mm-hmm. I just know from what I've researched, because I follow Fight the New Drug, which is not a religious organization, but a non-religious organization that is against porn. And they're like, it damages relationships. It's not realistic. It fuels sex trafficking. The most interesting thing that I knew was the case, but to see them say it and put into words was like, yes. It was like, how do you tell the difference when you're watching porn between someone who's sex trafficked or not? And they're like, you can't. And it's true. You can't tell who actually wants to do what they're doing there and who doesn't. And who is saying they want to be there and who is meaning it and lying about it. Mm-hmm. There's no way you can tell about it. You don't know if this porn video was made by someone who took their daughter to a basement and raped her there and recorded it so he could make money. You don't know, but it happens.
It kind of reminds me of that dude. Did you ever watch The Matrix?
I did. The first
that,
one.
I forget what his name was. He was the guy that was a traitor and gave everybody up. And he was like, just put me back in the Matrix. Make me ignorant to everything, but make me wealthy. And I just want a nice steak. It's like that because, I think that I get the whole animal rights thing as well. PETA, is that what it's called?
PETA.
PETA, and all the people that are vegetarian or vegan or whatever the term is called, where you don't eat meat because animal cruelty and whatnot. Every time I eat a chicken, I think, was this chicken happy? Or was it one of those chickens that was just farm raised and had a poor quality of life? And if I eat this, am I paying into the bad culture of animal cruelty?
The honest truth is the destiny of both those chickens is still your plate.
Well, but that's the thing. It's like you could argue the same about pornography, saying, well, this is what is that term where it's cruelty free?
Yeah.
Cruelty free porn. I guess that's how you could label it. This porn is cruelty free. Everybody's of equal age. You're still fueling that industry. But, on the other side of things, because that's a Christian point of view as well. Well, not specifically a Christian point of view. That's a pro-rights, or anti-trafficking.
The most frustrating thing about the industry and what goes on with it in society is the hypocrisy of society right now about them being frustrated about how women are treated, how African Americans are treated, how different people are treated, yet they still go into the porn industry. They still support it. They still look for porn and still say it's an okay thing. You can't tell society you need to treat women better, and then those same women are up on the stage,
and men
up on the stage, half-dressed, dancing. Like, you can't have both. You cannot have both. That doesn't coexist. You can't have people treating people with respect and then also allowing the porn industry. It's not going to coexist. It's only going to get worse.
Yeah, well, it transcends that too. This is just, honestly, the porn industry is just a symptom of a bigger problem.
Yeah.
And this might hurt some of you guys and might irritate you, but it's because the world needs Jesus. Because even in workplaces, for instance, that exploitation of human value is always a thing. In traffic, exploitation of human value is a thing. In relationships, in neighborhoods, exploitation of human value is a thing. And that's the whole point of Jesus, man. Like, he helps us understand that every person has value and that every person's situation is something that God pays close attention to individually. And I think if we had that perspective, and if more people just got their eyes and ears and focus off all the symptoms and just focused on value of people, all this stuff would help itself. And, I think for me, wrapping this up, the whole how did it damage me? Me walking into a life with Jesus at the age of like 29 or so, it coincided with me being free from my addiction to porn. And it's because God started showing me that all people are valuable. Mm-hmm. Everybody. Even the people that I seem removed from on the screen, the people that I don't see at the back of McDonald's making my cheeseburger. Like, why are you taking so long? Well, it's because there's one little Hispanic lady back there working her tail off because everybody else called out, and I'm pissed off at her because my Big Mac is taking a minute longer than expected. It's like if you keep your focus on the value of a human being and you focus on love, which is what Jesus did. All this stuff that we're talking about were essentially non-essentials, oddly enough. But he addressed them as they came up, not from the perspective of this is wrong just because. His perspective was this is wrong and unhealthy because, well, it's not. It takes away from your value.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he expounded on things like why hatred in general is bad. It's like people will talk about like how murder is a bad thing, but if you hate someone, you've practically murdered them. like he kind of, this is how these things fit together. If you look at a woman with lust in your eyes, you've committed adultery with her. Like, he understood that everything started here and eventually made its way out there into translation physical activities.
Yeah, and the really important thing there too is statements like that just piss people off because it's like, no, I didn't lust after her. Who cares about adultery? What even is adultery? Well, all that stuff, if you just look at it from the lens of, okay, let's work our way backwards. Not, this can't be true because God loves, it's, okay, God loves me, so where's the truth in this, right? So for instance, like with all this porn stuff, It's like adultery, for instance, not looking at a woman lustfully. It's not as cut and dry as just don't look at any women or whatever, like crazy expectations. It's where's your heart at, because if God loves me and he's suggesting not to do this, it's because that's going to create things in my mind where I don't see her as a person. I see her as an object of lust. And therefore, when I engage with her, I try to get things from her that I don't deserve unless I pay the cost of admission. I'm not actually pursuing her. I'm pursuing her body. And that's a check in ourselves, guys. And that check in myself was something that honestly porn damaged through my early 20s. It made sense, but because I wasn't looking for the value in another person, even down the road, I allowed porn to happen in my life, which would, honestly, it's probably going to affect me for the rest of my life.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thank you, porn. But anyways, there is hope, and we're going to talk more about that Friday next week at 7 p.m. So you want to make sure that you set your calendars. We're going to start going live at 7 on Friday. So be there for that. We'll talk about how we overcame that and where we're going, what we're going through and stuff of that nature. Just being open and vulnerable with you guys so we can help you best we can.
And also, I'm really curious, guys, whether you agree with us or disagree with us. Let us know in the comments or shoot us an email at thoughtraid@gmail.com. How has porn influenced you? Has it influenced you in a good way? If so, why? Has it influenced you in a bad way? If so, why? And how do you view it? Like, do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Do you think it's neutral?
Yeah, and also if you've really enjoyed this stream, make sure to like. If you're on Facebook, share it. And if you're on YouTube, we would love for you to subscribe to us and hit the bell notifications. That way when we go live again, you'll know and you can be a part of this because we love talking to you guys. So the more conversation, the better. I love hearing from you guys. Thank you, Seth, for joining us today and saying hello and with your comment and stuff. I'm sorry this is not actually porn. Sorry to disappoint you, but, I'm sure you'll be fine. You don't need to see this. You're good. But also, last note, Monday, next week, 4 p.m., we're having a special guest, Pastor Matt Peterson from Awake Church. He'll be joining us, and he'll be talking about the reality of being a pastor. So if you've ever been interested in being a pastor, or you are a pastor and you're wondering if you're alone in your struggles, you want to be there with us because he's going to have some good things to talk about. We'll make sure we'll have some great questions to ask him, and we'll love to have you there for that. That will be the normal time of 4. So Monday, 4 p.m., Pastor Matt will be with us. Friday, 7 p.m., we'll finish this topic talking about how we overcame our porn addictions. Be there. We look forward to seeing you guys. And thank you so much for watching. We really enjoy having you be with us, and we look forward to every time you're here. So I'm just excited. We will see you again very soon. I can see far away from where I've been. He says, I see a potential. I see a potential in my eyes. I see a potential. I never lost sight of the reason why you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. We sing Jesus, you're alive.